Hello everyone, hello everyone, hello everyone, and welcome. Welcome to Satsang. Let me move this over a little bit. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff around here. So happy you're all here. I'm just getting myself set up here. Me, my channel. Make sure everybody's seeing me. There we are. There we are. Good, good. Good, good. Now let's make sure everything is set correctly. Yeah. Let me move all this stuff around so it's not so cluttered. The microphone, extra microphone down and the like. YouTube is forever changing the the framing on me. So that's much better. Nice and clean. So hi everybody. So glad you're here. Thank you for deciding to spend your Sunday afternoon or morning or evening, or if you're in Australia, maybe even Monday morning with me, and really with yourself. As I always like to point out, satsang. While the setting is a teacher and student kind of dialogue, the reality of it is that it is your own personal inquiry into who your actual nature is, what your actual nature is, who you truly are. So we're here to engage in that. My job is to keep pointing you back to that which is most essential. Your job is to keep looking. It is to question authorities and assumptions, to not take anything that you haven't put to the test yourself, individually, personally. And that's deeply, deeply significant because we live in a world where we are constantly being invited to defer to the authority of others. Others that have, political power, economic power, power over your life, employers and that sort of thing, philosophical, religious, even spiritual, even something like this. I do my very best to avoid any kind of statement that I say is absolutely true. But even if I do, if anybody does, remember that what you experience in your life is completely a result of what you have brought in to your consciousness and to your mind and believed to be true. And the fascinating thing about the nature of consciousness and the creative nature of the mind is that if we believe it, we quite literally believe it into existence. We experience our beliefs. They shape our perceptions, and therefore they shape the experience that we have of life. Because our perceptions are the sum total of our experience of life. We don't know anything outside of that, except for one thing. Because everything that happens in your perceptions could be a complete illusion. It's important to grasp. Everything you experience could be a complete illusion, even a hallucination. Seeing things that aren't there. But one thing can't be a hallucination. One thing cannot be an illusion. And that is the actual active experience. Your existence cannot be an illusion. Now, that's important. You go, yeah, of course, whatever. But it's deeply significant because it's the only bit of trustworthy information that we actually have. As I said, we're always looking for truth. We're looking for something concrete. We're looking for something dependable. We're looking for something that doesn't change, which means we're looking for truth. We're looking for reality. And in that process, we're invited and sometimes forced to accepting a particular religious teaching or philosophical teaching or an economic teaching, or any combination of the above. And we're supposed to just do, oh, this is the truth. You have to accept it. So don't accept anything. Right? My job is to get you to question everything. Absolutely everything that you assume to be true. Because if you question it all and you remove everything that proves to be untrue, that proves to be untrustworthy, that proves to be transient, coming and going, eventually you get down to the bottom. When you get down to the bottom, the only thing that can be left, if you've removed everything that isn't true, is what's true. So, on that note, let me say hello to everyone. Oh my. John M., here we go. Wildcat Drums. Hello, G. Dale here from England, UK. Hope you are amazing. I am amazing, thank you. Inner Aesthetic says, afternoon GP, looking good in that jacket. Thank you. Love to hear that. Starlight Glimmer, hello. RB more real. I think that's a new visitor. I'm not sure I've seen that name before. Hi to you. Ishta, beautiful Sunday, everyone, far and wide from Baton Rouge in USA. Wildcat Drums, GP. Ha. RB says Satsang. Eva, namaste. So nice to see you from Poland. John M. Satsang. Woo. Hello everyone from Madeira Island. That's Ursula in Portugal. Welcome. Shanika, a GP, really looking forward to another great satsang tonight. My question is, what is Kundalini? Does it really work? What method can I do to activate the chakras? Love, Shanika from England. Great place to start. Yeah, there's a lot of spiritual teachings about energy and the flow of energy and releasing energy. And a lot of people will even say that awakening or enlightenment is the release of the Kundalini energy from the root chakra up through the spine all the way to the crown chakra. I would have to disagree with that, simply because however intense that might be, however blissful it might be, however wonderful it might be, although I know many people, I've actually worked with, coached some people who had that Kundalini experience, and it was devastating for them. I mean, just their whole lives fell apart. They just couldn't deal with it. They really weren't prepared for that kind of a release of energy. But the point I always try to make is that it is phenomenal. It is something being experienced. And as such, as wonderful as it is, it cannot actually tell you what you are, because you are not an experience. You are what is having the experience. Any experience must be something other than you. Maybe very close, maybe very intimate, like a Kundalini rising experience moving through the body, which can completely dominate the entire experience in the moment, and can be just this enormous explosion of energy. It's still phenomenal. There's the experience, and then there's the experiencer. Enlightenment or awakening is the realization of who the experiencer is. That is, it is self-realization. It is the direct intuitive insight into who you are, separate from all phenomena, separate from any reference point. It does not refer to the body, it does not refer to thoughts, it does not refer to Kundalini, it does not refer to experience at all. Now, the chakras, as an element of existence, and they are real. They're not what we think they are. I don't really teach about the chakras anymore, but when I did, I pointed out that what they actually were was aspects of consciousness. They were the way consciousness experiences the world. They make up the body. The body is a chakra. The idea that the chakras are these, swirling vortexes of light in the body is a dilution. It is almost a distortion. Like all of the Eastern teachings that made it to the West, they really got distorted by the overly materialistic mentality of the West and the Western drive towards results and success and all of that kind of stuff. So they got reduced from being a map, a model through which you could understand experience, to these swirling vortexes of light you see on New Age posters. Pretty, but the word chakra is the Sanskrit word, and all it means is wheel. And it refers to a flow of energy. And as you can tell, energy takes different kinds of forms. So the root chakra, as they would say, the first chakra, isn't actually located in the body. It is the body. Matter of fact, everything physical is the first chakra. It is that simply it is nothing but the energy of life, or the Tao, or whatever you want to call it, that manifests as form. And then there's the energy of desire, there's the energy of a sense of self, there's the energy of the heart, of expression and creation, there's the energy of vision, there's the energy of connection to the divine. They're a nice way, and in fact, I use them as a model when I teach inner reconciliation in both levels 1 and 2. And then I drop them in level 3, and we go more purely into the non-dual approach. But so they have a very positive use. When you're coaching someone and helping them through traumatic material and the like, the particular area in the body in which you feel a certain kind of distress can be very indicative of the nature of the trauma that is stuck there. For instance, if you feel it in the solar plexus, that's associated with the sense of self. And so it's something about the sense of identity that feels threatened or feels bent out of shape or the like. So it's a good tool for, it's a good clue, right? Now, that doesn't mean that the energy of the third chakra, which is the sense of self, is located in the solar plexus. It's all, like I said, this is the physical body, is the first chakra, and therefore the energy is reflected there, right? Because they're all interconnected. I mean, pure white light can't be seen, but when you hide part of it, you see another part of it. So red light, or green light, or blue light, or violet light, are all light, right? They're different aspects of the same thing. But when that thing is seen in its entirety, it becomes invisible. Pure white light cannot be seen. It must be reflected. And that is a perfectly beautiful metaphor for the nature of the self, the nature of consciousness, which is your nature. In its wholeness, it cannot be seen. But when you see part of it, form appears. Right? So you, me, everybody else, is simply a part, not a part that has been taken away from it, right? But simply a part that has kind of come out from the background, but is still light. Its nature is light, and when it's done its thing, it will fall back into the pure, invisible light. So the nature of, we tend to, in the West, materialize all of these things. We want to concretize them. We think of the body and the material universe as being an absolute fact, and that somehow spirit and these, spiritual energy and all that sort of stuff is interacting with matter. And that's the big misconception. Matter is a concept. It is not a thing. You do not ever experience matter. You always experience consciousness. That's the actual nature of your experience, and I invite you to check it out yourself. people will say, no, you're experiencing a physical thing. But I never experience a physical thing. I only experience vibrations in consciousness. That's actually what I experience. So my view of the universe is nothing other than consciousness taking form. That's all I see it as. And this is actually true. Even science, real scientists, theoretical physics and quantum mechanics and the like, quantum physicists and the like, will see everything. They don't see it matter as being this solid thing. In neurology, we don't ever experience the world. You experience an image in the brain of a world. So all of our perceptions that we say are out there are actually right here. Now, since even the most materialistic of scientists will say that, we need to just take that a step further and say, well, okay, well then, what is it that is actually having that experience? And this is where it becomes very interesting, because the materialist will say, well, that's the body. It's some kind of a function in the brain. Yet when you take the entire body apart, you cannot find consciousness. You can't. You can find all sorts of structures, you can find electrons, you can find all sorts of things, all sorts of activity going on. But you cannot pinpoint anything to say, this is me. This is the me that is having experience. This is a me that is aware of thought. This is the me that chooses that thought over that child. This is the me that discerns the truth from a falsity. You can't find any of that. The non-dual spiritual approach is extremely bold in saying, well, I'm going to draw a very different conclusion. The materialist would say, well, yeah, eventually we'll find what that structure is. But in the consciousness-only model, we say, stop looking. You've been looking for it for 3,000 years. You haven't found it. If I was looking that long for my keys, I would give up and get a new set of keys. It's not there. Looking for consciousness in the brain is like looking for the Mona Lisa in the paint. It's not there. Yes, it's related to it. Activity is expressed in the brain. No doubt about it. But even the brain is nothing but an image we're holding in our minds. What's the actual mode of experience? What is actually having the experience? That's what I refer to as consciousness. And the big question is, does consciousness exist? That is, do you exist? Because obviously, that which is hearing my words, that which is registering everything that's being experienced is you, right? I mean, it's not like something else. What we're talking about is you. So what we're talking about is your actual nature. And the question is this consciousness simply a function of matter? It started at birth and is going to end at death. Complete oblivion for eternity. A little blurb of existence, of conscious awareness. Oh, I'm here. And then followed by oblivion again. Nothing. Or does consciousness exist independently of all material structures? That's the question to be asked. Not many ask that question. They just kind of assume. They just take it at face value, it's material and all of that. Or they say, yeah, there's material and then there's spiritual, and they're all kind of jumbled up together. So, but for the most part, we live our lives as if we are finite, separate beings living in a finite, separate world. And I invite you to challenge that. I invite you to say, you know what? There's a fundamental question here. Does consciousness exist independently of all material structures? That is it a self-existent entity? That's the question to ask. And be willing to, and you'll notice that the idea, the concept that it is a phenomena of matter is an unproven, and I would even argue unprovable assumption. And that you can begin to kind of break it down, because I never experience matter. The only thing I ever experience is consciousness. So they tell me I'm actually experiencing a material world out there, but I've never seen it, and neither have they. We've only ever experienced conscious, because the medium of experience is consciousness, isn't it? Take away consciousness, does anything exist? Well, they say, yes, it does, but how do you know? It's a big, unproven and unprovable assumption. And everyone who takes up the inquiry, the non-dual spiritual inquiry, you're pioneers. You're walking into territory that's going to challenge the foundations of all of thought, all of the foundation of all human beliefs, all human systems. This is not a meek or mild undertaking. So, gotta hope I didn't start going right over everybody's head, because I went here so quickly. But needless to say, that's what occupies the vast majority of my brain cycles. To pardon the expression. Come on back. Oh, sometimes this thing gets stuck. Hold on a second. Sometimes YouTube gets stuck on the side angle and I can't see the questions. So I have to go back to here. Here. And there we go. All right. Oh my. By the way, I would invite everybody. I get a lot of questions, and I go two and a half hours, and then I'm like kind of done for the day. So get your questions in early. I mean, obviously, if something comes up later, I try to get through them all, but I can't always. So please get them in early if you possibly can, and as always, please like and share. It's me saying that once or twice during this is pretty much the extent of my marketing. Let's see. Shanika, I hope that answers your question about that. I never deny an experience. The whole point of non-dual inquiry is to come to understand experience for what it actually is, not what we believe it to be. To kind of go past all of the stories, all of the ideas, all of the concepts to get to the pure experience itself. The pure experience itself needs no interpretation. You don't need anybody to tell you that you exist. You do. What is the nature of that existence? Well, nobody can tell you that except you. Hello. Shouting from Washington, D.C., Maryland area. Daryl. Hi, Daryl. Namaste from Germany, from Wang, 671. John M. with a guy in the sunglasses. Hi from Bulgaria, from Ivalo. Ivilo. Hello, Ivilo. Sab Will. Hi, GP. Sab in Paris here. It's from 10 p.m. to midnight here. Wow. Have you guys gone on to daylight savings time yet? Maybe it'll be a little bit shorter then. David and Eileen, greetings from a surprisingly chilly UK. Good to see you. It was chilly here too in Seattle. John says hello from Scotland. Hello, John. Keith. Hi again, GP. Hi, Keith. Sophie, hello from here. Oh, I thought you were being non-dual and spiritual. Hello from here. Where are you? Here. That's actually the right answer. Then she says hello from Herefordshire. Love, Sophie. Hi. Chris Gills. Hello, GP. Can we speak about how speaking from awareness is done? Is it to be totally present without any thoughts and just aware of the present moment? Then speaking happens spontaneously? Well, what's most important, the very first thing right, before any of that can happen, is to realize that you are awareness. It really does not do any good to be identified with the person, with a sense of a separate self, and then try to speak from awareness. The sense of being a separate self is a concept that colors our experience. Now, the separate self isn't an entity. It's a concept. Let's zip this up a little bit. I don't like those things. I should cut them off. It's a concept projected upon experience. Now, experience is real. We are having experiences all the time, right? It's effortless. Can't shut it off. We call them thoughts, emotions, and sensations. They're actually more than that. What we're actually always experiencing at any given time is consciousness. But the sense of being a separate self, that is something other than consciousness or awareness, right? With that believed, it creates perceptions of what is being experienced from the point of view of a separate self. Now, that separate self is going to be limited, it's going to be confined, it's going to be identified with the body, it's going to have problems and issues, it's going to have highs and lows, it's going to be seeking the highs and trying to get rid of the lows. That's the nature of the separate self. But that separate self is simply a belief that has been believed for so long that it's actually been embodied in the nervous system and has become almost automatic. Now, even the sense of a separate self cannot exist without some consciousness that is aware of it. No thought can exist in and of itself. It must be happening within some other medium. It is not an entity floating around there somewhere. That other medium in which all thought and emotion and sensation appear is what I call consciousness. It is what is experiencing everything all the time. It is what you are, and what you are, it is what is hearing my words, words right now. That's consciousness. Right? Whatever that is, let's not even put any, I don't even like the word to put the word consciousness on it, because people immediately run off into some kind of spiritual idea about it, or some kind of non-dual idea about it. It's a word to represent something. Let's point at the thing that even the word conscious, we could make any word up. We could make bugaboo. We could call it anything, right? And in other languages, it's a different word. So, but all languages, that word is pointing to the same thing. What's it pointing to? One of the problems with using a word like consciousness or awareness is because once it becomes a concept, the mind then, there's a sense of being separate. Oh, I'm looking at awareness. Well, what's looking at awareness? Another awareness? Is there another one that's looking at this one? And so we kind of get lost in our own words. So they kind of take on a meaning of themselves. All right, so what is this awareness? Well, the awareness is simply that which is aware of me right now. You're aware of your room, you're aware of the chair, you're aware of your thoughts, you're aware of your experience. That's it. That's all there is to it. I want to keep it that simple. From that point of view of awareness, you just notice that thoughts come and go, don't they? It's not like you're making thoughts happen. It's not like you're making emotions or sensations happening, right? Awareness is like just this pure experiential field, right? It's just the pure experiencing itself, without intention, without preference, without any kind of aspiration or ambition, even without a past, right? Even that past are just ideas, thoughts coming, memories, associations. All of it are just this enormously complex and rich arising of all sorts of content, right? But it's all arising and being perceived by the same thing. that thing being you. And of course, when you call it awareness, there's like me and then there's awareness, right? But what you're talking about is yourself, right? I mean, it's you having the experience. You're the one that the picture of me on YouTube is registering with, right? That you're the one where the words that are coming through the speakers are registering, right? The speaker isn't hearing them. This microphone I have up here isn't hearing me, right? there's no sentience there. There's no consciousness there. Consciousness is you, that which is actually hearing me. Now, everything arises spontaneously, right? And awareness is there, aware of it. Without awareness, nothing can arise. So everything is just arising. So in fact, everything is arising out of and in awareness. Arises in it, is seen by it, and disappears back into it. You mean just say kind of disappears into the emptiness. It comes out of seemingly nothing, nowhere, which is simply awareness with no content. It is seen, it is experienced, and then it dissolves back into that pure emptiness. When there is a sense of self that is identified with the concept of a separate self, even when it is identified as being the seeker of the true self, somebody who's on the spiritual path, all of that are identifiable attributes and qualities in awareness that you can clearly identify. When you are identified as that and you're speaking, you are speaking as and for, you're kind of the mouthpiece for the separate self. You are voicing those concepts. You are speaking those ideas. You are speaking as if you were that. Now, you're not that. You're never that, okay? It is a misconception. It is a misperception. It is not what you actually are. But when you are identified as that, you will speak from that position. You will literally believe it into existence. You will argue for it. You will maybe even eloquently, right? Now, the entire thing is happening in awareness. It is all arising in awareness. Awareness never doesn't speak in the sense that it says, I've got something to say now, right? All speaking arises and subsides within it. Now, as the sense of identification moves further and further away from the sense of being a separate self, so that you realize that the I that you actually are and awareness are one and the same, different ideas and images and metaphors come to the surface and get spoken. And you could say, in that instance, you are now speaking from the point of view of awareness. You are now speaking as awareness. You could even say that it is awareness that is speaking, right? It is simply speaking as awareness, speaking as the person, is simply the quality and the origin of the thoughts that are being expressed. Because all speaking is simply the expression of thoughts. Are those thoughts referring back to a self-image of a separate self, or are they referring to awareness? That is the, maybe I'm putting too fine a point on this, but that's the distinction. Both arise within awareness, right? God sends the rain on the just and the unjust, right? Awareness has no preference, right? It doesn't really care whether the thoughts are being spoken as the separate self or they're being spoken representing the awareness. It's completely unconcerned. You know, the sky doesn't care what kind of clouds move through it. It remains unaffected, and the clouds move through and they don't leave a trace in the sky. The worst thunderstorm or hurricane doesn't leave a trace in the sky. Completely unaffected by it. And so, from this point of view, thoughts, metaphors, ideas, a voice arises and speaks from awareness. Or rather, should say, the voice is referring back to its real source. The source of all thought. I mean, even the most arrogant, egoistic, tight-assed person is a form of consciousness. It's appearing in consciousness, isn't it? So it's got to be a form of consciousness. It's very limited. It's very confined, right? It's here. It's completely unaware of the infinitude in which it exists, but it's all made of the same stuff. Right? So whenever you are recognizing that awareness or consciousness is what you are, and that recognition you all have. You wouldn't be sitting here listening to me if you didn't have it. The problem is that you don't have the recognition. The problem is that the doubts your mind has, you're actually taking seriously. So the mind's got all sorts. Really, am I that? No, I think I'm really. I'm this finite person. I actually like being that. I want to be this. What happens to my individual? It's going to have all of these things, and you're simply thinking that that's actually you debating all of this, and it isn't. So you'll find that no matter what, you are always speaking from awareness. Because if you weren't speaking from awareness, there'd be no sense of speaking. Speaking would be unknown, right? Without consciousness, could it even be known? So we're really just looking very carefully, and with a real fine-tooth comb, at the nature of the content that's being expressed. And does it point back to the truth of your being, the infinite, illimitable, abundant, timeless, and boundless consciousness? Or is the thought that's being expressed point back to its origin as a separate self? Small, contracted, constrained, maybe good, trying to be really good, trying to be spiritual, on the way, mastering all this stuff, realizing, I guess I really am awareness, and one day I'm going to fully realize it. Right? No matter how rarefied or how good it might be, or how constricted it is, if its origin is coming from the sense of a separate self, then it's speaking as the separate self. That would be what you refer to as speaking as the separate self. Otherwise, you are speaking as awareness. So when you say I am awareness, right? Now, let's be nice and clear. Make this really simple. You can all say I am pure awareness, and to a certain extent, you all believe it, right? Now that idea, I am pure awareness, cannot arise from the sense of a separate self. They're incompatible. Christ put it beautifully. He says the same fountain can't put forth both sweet water and bitter. It's one or the other. So every thought that you have that points back towards you as pure consciousness and pure awareness is emanating from there. Every thought that says, I'm trying to get there, or that's not what I am, or I don't know what I am, or I'm going to get there someday, that's originating from the sense of being the separate self. Right? Those thoughts that we experience up here cannot originate in the same place. And that which distinguishes one from the other is awareness. The awareness that knows itself. Every time you see a thought and say, that thought's referencing the sense of a separate self, that is awareness. That's you knowing you. That recognition. The capacity to distinguish and discern the truth. That's you. That's awareness. Does that help you, my friend? Chris? Micah Lighthouse, good morning from Sydney. Good morning, Micah. I'm seeing some new people here. Glad to have you. Glad. Liz Love from New Jersey. A great name. Sunny Kahlo. Happy Mother's Day, G. Oh, right. Yes. Happy Mother's Day. Happy Mother's Day to everyone listening who's a mother. And let's just make it for every woman, because there's the potential for a woman, for a mother. Dale Wiggins, a very cold and rainy Red Sox game, playing your Seattle Mariners. Hopefully I can get home in time to ask questions. Thanks, Raji. You know, I think, Dale, this may be the very first time I know of that somebody's been listening to me, to Satsang, during a baseball game live, at a baseball game. So you must be playing your Seattle Mariners. You must be well, you're either in Boston or Seattle, but it's probably colder in Boston. Starlight, is prayer useful? If not, what does one do instead? Yes, prayer is useful. What is the highest prayer? Lord, replace me with you. Let your prayer be to understand. Open my eyes, Lord. You'll see a lot of that through the scriptures and through the Bible. The prayer to just open my eyes. The conversion of Saul, who became Paul. The scales fell from his eyes, and he saw clearly. Everyone should have the attitude, the atmosphere, the sentiment of prayer. I love the idea of prayer because it's humble. It is supplicating. It is a willingness to bend, to go on your knees in front of something greater than yourself. That is the spirit of non-dual inquiry. In fact, without that is where you get what I call neo-Advaita teachers, a bunch of teachers. There's nobody there, there's nothing to do. It's cold, right? It's missing that ingredient of deep humility, which is a sign of awakening in the heart and not just in the mind. Now, prayer by itself won't get you all the way. It needs the inquiry. We need the opening and the breaking of our hearts. And we need the precision of inquiry. We need the masculine and the feminine energy, the openness, the receptivity, the humility, and we also need the precision and the relentlessness and the pointedness. We need both. So let prayer grow. Prayer usually starts as a supplication. God, please help me. Give me something. I need something. Please help me out. If you give me this, oftentimes even kind of a business deal, If you give me this, I will go to church all regularly. I will give money to a charity or something like that. Sometimes it can be a business deal. Sometimes just an honest supplication, please help me. Now, that's a very powerful thing. That recognition that you've reached the end and the resources you have at your disposal at that moment are not adequate, which means you've got to go beyond it. I mean, the prayer to God is nothing more than we've taken everything that we think we're not and we've projected it on something that we think is. All of the goodness and the mercy and the power and the abundance and the wisdom and the creativity, the sense of being a separate self feels, I don't have very much of that. We still have a sense of the expansiveness of it and the possibility, and we project that out on a super being that we then call God, and we feel separate from it. God is the metaphor for the true self. But it's a very fascinating and interesting and subtle journey to that, to the realization of that. Because oftentimes on the spiritual journey, especially if the non-dual inquiry is too much of the intellect, there's an arrogance that can arise. And it's the ego seeking to understand itself, the ego seeking oneness, seeking that I know the truth. The I disappears in the truth. The I disappears in the inquiry. To quote Muji, he said, the one who starts the inquiry does not finish the inquiry, but is finished by the inquiry. The prayerful attitude is the spirit and sentiment of total self-sacrifice. I am giving it all to God. I am letting it go. This is my desire, my supplication, but now I'm turning it over to you. I'm releasing all my control over it, and I'm giving it to you. That sense is that energy cuts the ego off at the knees. The ego wants to accomplish it. The ego or becomes so pious that God blesses it. Oh, see how good I am? Right? And so that prayerful attitude, or the bhakti yoga is what it's called, the path of devotion. I wish more people who were pursuing the non-dual actually had that. It's where I came from. I came from the metaphysical, the New Thought churches, but it was very much religious experience. There was me and then there was God, and I was seeking the oneness with God, and I was trying to see that God was all. So the prayer was not just metaphysical affirmations, but a humility. It's like sacrifice your personal desires so that you can harmonize with the larger infinite desire. I wish a lot of people studying the law of attraction would understand that. Yes, desires arise, you want your wants, you want to visualize to get the things that you want. But wouldn't it be better if you took that thing that you want and you just laid it up on the altar and say, make it pure. Yes, I want that, but I don't have the wisdom to discern whether I should even have that or not. Whether this is going to do me any good or not, whether this is going to be of value or not. It's just this, I want. The wants are there. Lay them on the altar and say, if this serves me, you, humanity, then please bring it to fruition. If it doesn't, then take it from me. Take everything from me that isn't truly me. Lord, replace me with you. If you have that kind of a prayerful attitude, and then you stir into that the kind of inquiry we're talking about, what's the actual nature of consciousness? Well, the actual nature of consciousness is the very thing you're praying to. And then you find that the one doing the praying, the one being prayed to, are one. And then prayer simply is subsumed into the deepest understanding, the genuine wisdom. It isn't a personal, wisdom is no longer a personal possession. You realize that the presence of wisdom is the presence of the divine, and that's what you actually are, and who you thought you were, who it was that started praying in the first place to get something, has vanished. Does that answer your question, my friend? Or anybody's question about prayer? Thank you for bringing that up. Ducks. Hey, Ducks. Hey, GP. My self-inquiry has often a neutral feeling and not of bliss. Is it normal? Are you experiencing it? Then it's normal. I guess at the heart of your question is, am I stuck somewhere? If by neutral you mean it's just quiet, it's still, there's not a lot of disturbance. The word ananda Satchit Ananda, which gets interpreted bliss, also simply means stillness, peace, contentment, right? It's not ecstatic bliss, like getting something you really wanted, or falling in love, right? Or orgasm or something. It's not that kind of bliss. It is a contentment. It is simply just a sense of contentment. If there's a sense of quiet, a sense of equanimity, and that's what you mean by neutral, you stay with that. We're not trying to generate emotional states. They come and they go. And an insight, deep spiritual insight, can in fact generate incredibly profound emotional states, but they will fade. Nobody stays in that state forever. You can't. You couldn't function, right? So what we're really touching, what we really want to touch, is the constant, unchanging background. Now, a state of bliss isn't the constant, unchanging background. A state of contentment, happiness, joy is. And that will give rise to moments of intense joy, intense, right, experience of it. And then it just subsides back into that contentment, the peace, that stillness, that freedom from the clutching or the resisting. All of that arises and falls, and you remain that which is unmoved by all of it. But it's not blank, it's not empty, it's experiencing everything. It is simply not attached to any particular experience. So, if bliss is there, wonderful. If bliss is there, not there, bliss is not there, that's wonderful. It means nothing. Are you there? The one is aware of bliss being there or not? Right? That's reality, not the experience. So, if you're feeling neutral, if things aren't disturbing you, if you're less perturbable, if you're slow to anger or to react, if there's more presence about you, well, you are definitely on the right track. Do not worry about a thing. It is a big spiritual mistake that we are seeking a kind of experience. We think spiritual awakening is a kind of experience. It isn't. It is not experience at all, and it is not experienced at all. The stories of the great insights and ahas, and the cosmic orgasm and the like. People, enormous, laughter and all that sort of thing, has kind of. The mind likes to attach to that sort of thing. It likes to, yes, well, that's what it is. Because the mind, the egoic mind, is always seeking experience. That's what it does. The idea of reality being the absence of experience, or rather being the pure experiencer that is unmoved or undisturbed or untouched by whatever the experience is completely outside the realm of what the mind, the egoic mind, can grasp. Yet that is reality. It is a completely neutral background. It is not void, it is not blank, it is not empty in the sense of boredom. It is rich and alive, but it's infinitely deep contentment. Hopefully that answers it for you, ducks. Sarah Sands, hi G, hi Sarah, I'm fascinated by what you're saying. I forgot to sign in. I love you so much, Sarah in France. I love you too, Sarah. So good, so good, so good, so good. Sanjeev, hello Sanjeev. Sanjeev says, what is liberation? Is it also an illusion? If I'm unbound infinite consciousness, what gets liberated? It's a beautiful question. A beautiful, beautiful question. And all I can do is point. You see, if I take the Advaita teacher, which a lot of modern Advaita teachers say, nothing gets liberated. No one is liberated. There's nothing to be liberated from. It's true. But it's not the whole truth. I love the fact that the Buddha, who, in my humble opinion, is the most precise teacher of all time. The most precise, accurate, and brilliant. Just the best of all time. He talked about the truth exists whether you believe it or not. That's what it means. There's nothing to be liberated. The truth does not need to be liberated. The truth does not depend on whether you believe it or not. It holds all the cards. It is not bent. It will not bend to your will. It will not compromise. It will not make any kind of adjustments to accommodate your preferences. The truth is simply the truth. The truth means it is always the truth. It is unchanging. It cannot be adjusted. It cannot be changed. And this truth we're talking about is the truth of your being. So your actual, real, eternal being has never been caught, has never been stuck, will never be liberated. Does not need to be liberated. The truth does not need to be liberated. The false ideas need to be liberated, right? And so, but Buddha used the example that, well, not example, he said that the attainment, for lack of a better word, was the personal realization of Buddha knowledge, which is the experience of awakening. And of course, what you awaken to is that you've never been bound. So you never really need to be liberated. Now this may sound, like a contradiction, but that's the real nature of non-duality. If I just say there's nothing to be liberated, right? Well then, what do you explain all the rest of the stuff? The Zen master, somebody would say that to a Zen master, they'd get hit upside the head with a stick. Get liberated from that. Okay, I'm going to whack, 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 whack. You're liberated, right? Because it's neither one side or the other. It's as easy to get stuck in the absolute as it is easy to get stuck in the ego. Reality, your true nature, is this. It is an indescribable flow. So you are realizing that which has always been true. When you look at it from the perspective of the relative and the human being, we call it an awakening and a liberation. If you look at it from the point of view of the pure truth, pure awareness, pure reality, it is simply an image appearing of somebody who didn't know and now they know, right? Both of those are true. This is very, it's so hard to find words to express this. This is what Buddha referred to as the middle way. It is neither this nor that, nor both nor neither. He would say it neither exists nor it does not exist. The moment you take one side or the other, well, there's no one to be liberated and nothing to be liberated from. Absolutely true. The moment you hold on to that, you're stuck there. The experience of liberation gets reduced to a bunch of non-dual concepts. So it's true and it isn't true. It exists and it does not exist. There is liberation and there isn't liberation. I have attained. Buddha was once asked, "Have you attained?" He says, "I cannot say that I have attained because I have attained." Now, maybe after all of this little bit we've just been through, that'll become clear. That's exactly what he was talking about. You cannot put it in any absolute terms. The moment you do, you've stuck yourself, right? This is no longer happening. You're stuck. And the word stuck and the word suffering in Sanskrit are the same word. To be stuck is to suffer. The moment I take a position, right? That means, because if I do that, there's nothing to be liberated. I will disassociate from everyday life. I will disassociate from my everyday experience. I will turn it into something that, it's not real, right? Which means I will become disconnected. in a sense, I'll become a bit schizophrenic. I will become very unhealthy and dysfunctional. Relationships will be a struggle. I mean, how do I have a relationship from that point of view, right? The richness of life will get lost, right? But all of it's here, right? I can't deny it. I can't deny that I'm experiencing the sense of liberation, the sense of being a separate self. Oh, there it is. I'm experiencing that. That's an actual thing that's there. Now, I have seen that that's not who I am, right? Right? But to deny that as an experience, or to deny the experience of awakening, right, puts you into a place that's really pure abstraction. There's no juice in it. And I'm doing my best to try to describe it because we're doing this. We're moving back and forth in between these two places. The nature of awakening is simply you see things as they are. And in that seeing, you see, you've never been bound. That which was bound was only an image in the mind. But that image in the mind got liberated. The same image that identified, the same energy that was identified with the separate self, experiences the liberation from that separate self. But the entire thing is happening in the background of the pure awareness, which is beyond the idea of liberation or bondage. It simply is. It is that in which it is all appearing. So the sense of liberation is an experience that is being had, but it is arising in awareness and will subside in awareness. Does that help? I know it's not the kind of crisp, clear answer that someone would like to have, but when you get into this realm of that which is flowing between and is neither this nor that nor both nor neither, you're in a very different place. This flowing in between, by the way, is what was meant by the Holy Spirit, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. The Father being the absolute, the Son being the relative, the appearance of the absolute as form, and the Holy Spirit being the apparent duality, which was actually not duality. Which is why Christ said, Philip, if you've seen me, you have seen the Father. Now, of course, he was sitting there looking at him, right? He was looking right at him. Of course he saw him. No, that's not what he meant. If you really see me, you are seeing the Father. But you can't separate the Son from the Father. You can't separate the expression from the source. You can't separate the song from music. And it's always this kind of a dance. And you are all of it. Because all of it is appearing to you, is it not? So don't think of it as awareness as being something separate from what's being experienced. You can't separate them. It is one stupendous whole. Whew, hopefully that helps. Whoa. David and Elaine, hello. We feel on one level that there is the absolute certainty of our own true being as infinite consciousness. But life sometimes triggers old patterns of contracting back into an apparent separate self. Yes. And the problem is? Yes. The only problem is that is a belief you have that if those things are still being triggered, then you must not be really pure consciousness yet. All it means, I mean, what's aware of the triggers happening? Is it not consciousness that's aware of the triggers happening? So the triggers are happening and dissolving in consciousness. So are you not still consciousness? And does consciousness have any boundaries on it? Right? Does consciousness have any limit on what can appear and disappear in it, including a trigger, that seems to have a history? And then there's a feeling, the feeling in our body, thoughts in our head, stuff moving around, sensations and all that is associated with when we identified more with the person, the sense of a separate self. And what was more identified with that, these triggers were a big deal. And somehow I'm infinite conscious, I shouldn't be having those. Who said? Who said? Now, it's true that over time, the triggers will dissipate. They will dissipate in intensity and in frequency until they disappear completely, right? But that doesn't happen like that. It does not change for 1 second that you are pure consciousness. You get totally pissed off and angry and yelling at something, does not change the fact that you are pure consciousness. Because the consciousness that is aware of the trigger remains exactly what it is. And that pure infinite consciousness is not the least bit affected by the trigger. So what's happening is that there's still a sense of identification with the seeking mind that now feels, "Oh, I'm not really there yet because this trigger is here." The presence or absence of a trigger is irrelevant to who you are. That's the true understanding. So if it happens, it happens. If it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen. It has no meaning. It has no significance. It has no import. Who you are is always who you are. Nothing can change that. No, the universe exploding cannot change that. That is the truth that is beyond reproach. It is beyond question. It cannot be affected by anything that happens within it. And of course, the truth I'm talking about is not conceptual. The truth is the fact of your being. You are infinite consciousness. It is infinite consciousness that is aware of the trigger. It is infinite consciousness that is aware of the sense that it feels like it's a problem that there's a trigger, right? Notice, none of those things could appear were consciousness not there to cognize them. So all it means is there's still some seeds of a sense of a separate self, a better separate sense of a separate self, one that is trying to align itself with infinite consciousness, but you don't need it. You can just completely let the entire thing go. It comes up, it comes up. It means nothing. Does that help? Is that right to the point, Dave and Elaine? My buddies in England. Keith says, trying to explain consciousness is like trying to explain wetness to a fish. It's true, and yet, what do I do all day, every day, but try to do exactly that? You know, it's not really consciousness we're trying to explain. You know, we're trying to draw attention back to the consciousness that's having all the experiences. And of course it is. It's like telling the fish you're in the water. Or actually, it's more like telling the fish you are the water. Adult swim bumps. That's a new one. Welcome. Thoughts imply self. The idea of self attracts thoughts. How to break free from this cycle? Great question. Thoughts do not necessarily imply a self. Yeah. Thoughts can be about anything. A certain pattern of thoughts form those patterns of thought make up the idea, the concept of a self, of a separate, finite, limited, mortal self. There is no limited, finite, mortal self. It is nothing but a concept. Right? But those same thoughts can be, well, not same thoughts, the attention, the pattern that of energy that we know of as thought can be divorced from the sense of a separate self by seeing that the separate self isn't an entity, isn't a real thing, but is only a thought that has been believed, when that thought has been left behind, thoughts begin to reform themselves around something else. And yes, the nature of the mind, the nature of thought is to want to objectify something. So it will have kind of an ephemeral idea of the non-physical, non-form thought, self, but that's okay. Thought being put to the purpose of giving expression to that which is beyond thought is quite okay. Just like artists do it all the time, expressing in their particular medium that which is beyond what any medium can possibly express. Right? I mean, like the Statue of Liberty, right? Now that's not liberty. That would mean that liberty only exists there. It is an attempt to represent liberty with that particular statue, or the statue of justice, the woman with the blindfold on, holding the balance, and that they're in balance, and justice is blind. It isn't justice. It is an attempt to express justice. It's an attempt to express that which is beyond form, which cannot be directly stated. Right? Like the Tao that can be named is not the true Tao, and yet we continue to name. We continue to give expression to it. We give, but it's like every expression in thought, in emotion, and sensation, and in everything we do gives expression. It's a reflection of it, because the source, the actual entity, the real substance, the eternality, is empty. It cannot be, it in and of itself, like pure white light, cannot be seen. It is only seen in what is reflected by it. So you see the moon in the water, right? Well, the moon isn't in the water, and the moon is in the water. Is that the moon? Yes and no. So is an expression of justice, or an expression of love, or an expression of compassion, is that love? Is that the essence of it? No and yes. So the reflection has all of the characteristics of the essence in form, and so it is the essence, but it's not. This is the duality of it. This is the flow. It both is and isn't. The reflection in the mirror is you, right? Yes and no. They're both true. They're just different ways of looking at the same thing. This is the nature of all existence. So, let me continue with this. How to break free from this cycle. You break free from the cycle by seeing that thought in and of itself has no meaning, it has no purpose, it has no form, right? It serves whatever form. It's like clay, right? You put clay in the hands of an idiot, you're going to get an idiot piece of sculpture. You put it in the hand of an artisan, and you're going to get a beautiful pot, you're going to get a beautiful statue, you're going to get something worth looking at. You're going to see the reflection of beauty and artistry and mastery all embodied in this form. Thoughts like that. It will serve whatever purpose the artisan who's manipulating it puts it to. So that's how you become free. You don't have to get rid of thought. Buddha didn't talk about getting rid of the mind. For him, it was not about getting rid of the mind. It was the transforming of the mind. This is really important. It was not about getting rid of anything. It's about the transformation of it. Mind, and mind is nothing but patterns of thought. That's all it is, right? When it is attached to and giving voice to the sense of a separate self, will create chaos and suffering. But that very same energy, that very same potential for creating form that is thought, when giving expression to the inexpressible true self, now becomes what Buddha referred to as the great perfect mirror mind. And it's beautiful to use that. It's the reflection. It becomes a beautiful reflection. It's not the whole. And yet it is. It is reflecting what is absolutely true. It is reflecting the true self. You are seeing the true self, and you're not. Right? Because the actual true self cannot be seen. I mean, the same is true for you. Look in the mirror. You're looking at you, right? Well, yes and no. You can't actually see yourself. Ever. You never see yourself. You see reflections of yourself in a mirror, in a video, on a screen, in a picture, right? In a selfie. You never actually see you. And yet you do. This is this is the beauty and the subtlety and the paradoxical nature of non-dual inquiry. It both is and isn't simultaneously. But it's not this strange mystical thing. It's simply perceiving the actual nature of things. That what we experience as form does not exist independently of the substance that it is giving expression to. So the way to, as you put it, break free of the cycle is to notice, are the thoughts, the patterns that you are experiencing, are they referring back and therefore giving expression to this thought, this essential thought of a separate self, which you can then see is itself a thought and therefore not true, not substantial, not really you? Or are they giving expression to the inexpressible true nature of you? If you follow that, and just like, oh, that thought is pointing somewhere else, we're not going in that direction, and you will move closer and closer to that which then takes over thought and begins to create images of itself. Because you have liberated thought from serving that which is itself just a thought. And it serves that because of the belief that that thing, which in fact is just a thought, is actually an entity. And it isn't. Does that help? 77 minutes. 120. John M., curious about trapped emotions or trapped energy. What to do? Well, it really depends on the nature of the emotion itself. The first thing to do is to, oftentimes, when we refer to things, I've got a trapped emotion or a trapped energy within the system. The reason it's come up is because we're suffering in some way. We're feeling discontent. We're feeling out of sorts. We're not feeling like ourselves, which is content and peaceful and inspired and all of that. Right? So we want to get to the root of the suffering, right? And we discover these recurring emotions, these traumas, things that appear to be stuck in the body. The first thing to do, make sure I'm answering your question correct. Yes. The first thing to do is to recognize that it's not you. That it's not you who's trapped. It's not you who's stuck. It is a pattern of energy that got stuck into a position because it was not safe to be otherwise. That's it. That's the cause of trauma. There's a danger. There's no way out of the danger. I'm in an environment that's hostile. I just get stuck. The energy gets frozen. And I do whatever I can to survive within that environment. If I do not have the resources to survive in that environment, it's game over, I'm dead, end of story. If I do have the resources, through suppression and freezing of the energy and pushing things away, that I manage to survive, I've accomplished the goal of all life on Earth, which is survival. Of course, later on, as the sense of self expands, and as consciousness begins to awaken to its own true nature, these things which were simply a survival mechanism at one point now become painful. They become suffering, right? And so we want to alleviate the suffering. And so we begin to inquire into the nature of these things that I'm feeling. And this is really important because for a lot of people, they go, oh, uncomfortable energy, negative energy, we want to get rid of that negative energy. I'm not letting that energy in. I'm going to clear that energy. There are all sorts of different ways of approaching it. My approach of it is always the same: love and compassion. Turn your attention towards whatever the distressed thing is. When you do that, you bring the nature and the light of consciousness to it. The nature of consciousness, of awareness, is total, unconditional love and acceptance, because awareness has no preference. It does not say, I like you, I don't like you, I want you, I don't want you. That's attachment and aversion, which are the essence of suffering. So the first thing you'll notice then is if you turn your attention towards the stuck energy and simply be present with it, conscious of yourself as the light of awareness, the sense of suffering will begin to dissipate. As the sense of suffering dissipates and the inner space becomes clearer and more open and more accepting and therefore more safe, the stuck energy itself will start to move, because it's only stuck because the environment isn't safe enough for it to do anything. If the environment shifts, the very same energy, which, remember, its entire existence is doing nothing but adapting to environments. That's all the human nervous system does, is adapt to is constantly adapting to the environment. If you create an inner environment of safety, you will create the very environment it needs for all the traumas to be released, the stuck energy to be released. It'll happen. And so it all comes down to unconditional love and acceptance. You take the position of pure and perfect awareness, pure, open, loving, spacious consciousness. But, so it's like I was talking about before, being the absolute and relative. Don't say, well, this doesn't exist then. Instead, go to it. Go to the suffering as the pure, perfect, open awareness. This is the bodhisattva path. It's not the arhat path. This is not the path of just denied. It doesn't actually exist. It's not real. It's just an element in consciousness. I don't have to deal with it. It's true, but it'll still be there. Instead, be the open, spacious consciousness. And what's appearing now in consciousness is a sense of suffering. Are you able to allow the sense of suffering, stuck energy, conflict to arise without any preference about getting rid of it? That's pure awareness. That's consciousness that is not just stuck in the absolute. That's the bodhisattva vow. Suffering beings are numberless. I vow to save them all. You move naturally towards suffering. You can't help it. It's the nature of love and compassion. You just can't help it. So that's my recommendation for doing it. Turn it into an opportunity to find more of the infinite spaciousness that is your true nature. and more of its openness. So this is no longer a problem. It's simply something that has arisen within you that needs your attention, and you're going to give it with no preference as to what it does, with no ideas to make it be something else, not even to make it go away. It's pure allowing. It's pure open and spaciousness. It's the pure feminine principle. It's pure motherliness. Yes, right. I don't care how bad you were. You're my child. I love you. Boom. Nothing, no suffering, no pain, no discord, no inharmony can survive in the environment of pure unconditional love. You simply cannot do it, because there's nothing to defend yourself against, and it's all based on defending yourself against a hostile environment. When your internal environment is anything but hostile, when you are pure loving presence, it's game over. Really, it's game over. Just be patient. It may not disappear like that. It might. I've seen it just boom, gone. Other times, it may take a minute. It's okay. It's okay. All that means is that you have more opportunity to establish yourself as the pure, loving presence that you actually are. That's all it means. And that's a wonderful invitation to accept. RSVP to. John M. Curious about, sorry, that's the one I did. RB Maril, what's the difference between resistance to emotion and having a preference? Oh, you really can't have one without the other. If there's no preference, there's no resistance, right? The only way you can have resistance is that you have a preference. Preference, I want this, I don't want that, right? They go hand in hand. You really can't separate the two of them, right? So preference and resistance are one and the same. They're just simply, you could say preference is the cause of resistance. It's the cause of attachment and the cause of aversion, which is resistance. If I really have no preference for what's going on, I have no resistance. I'm totally present. I have no agenda. I have no judgment. I have no criticism. I have no sense of I'm nothing but pure love. I'm nothing but pure allowing and accepting. So, I'm trying to think if there's any more I want to add to that. What is the difference between resistance to an emotion and having a preference? Right. Yes, you cannot have one without the other. If there's no preference, there's no resistance. And if there's no resistance, it means you don't have a preference. Yeah, that's the simplest way to put it. If you need something a little bit more refined than that, please continue on. Chris Gill says, where do you speak from, GP? Oh, most of the time I speak from awareness. I speak from awareness. I mean, even that, you can see the subtle duality in that. I speak from awareness. I mean, who's the I that would speak from awareness? The only I there is awareness. There's not another I that is speaking from awareness, or they're speaking to awareness. That would make two awarenesses. There aren't two. There's only one. What is actually speaking? The only thing that can speak is also the only thing that can hear, and that is consciousness, conscious awareness. So it's not to say that I'm a Buddha, that I don't have a sense that arises of being a separate self, and sometimes I'll catch myself going, oh, right, there it is. Right? But especially in satsang, fortunately, that happens less times than more. And in satsang, there's a little magic that happens because I am completely and totally devoted to speaking, to giving you exactly what you need to answer your questions from the best place that I possibly can. But you can see, even as I'm saying that, there's a sense of duality there. It is only awareness that speaks, ever. Consciousness is the only thing that ever is speaking. But its speaking is not an act of will, it's not an act of volition. It's more like giving birth than it is like making something happen. It's just this natural process that that arises just out of the nature of awareness itself. Speaking arises, communication arises, the sense of a question and answer arises. Both are witnessed from the same place. So the pure awareness is beyond both question and answer, questioner and answerer. The entire thing is being played out. But that doesn't mean that the play is meaningless or nothingness. Because it is the play, the questioning and the answering, that gives expression, that is a reflection of, and therefore gives embodiment to that which is absolutely, but cannot be known except through form. So form is emptiness, emptiness is form. Music cannot be known except through a song. The true self, the infinite empty self, cannot be known except through form. And so form arises. The only thing is that there's this idea that this form is an entity existing independently from. It's like the mirror saying, I don't believe in that guy. Who's that guy out there? Right? The image in the mirror, or the characters in a novel not liking the ending, right? Wanting to protest the author. There is no separate entity. There's simply the idea that there is a separate entity, which has also arisen in the same awareness. Sab says, my son's mother's family love Barcelona FC. Not sure what FC means. They go ape when they win and get really angry when they lose. Oh, football club, Barcelona Football Club. Okay, I got it. Oh yeah, they're football fans, right? Well, that's what they're supposed to do. They're supposed to get, football. It'd be absolutely no fun if you didn't take sides, right? How do we interact with people for whom something so random, stupid, seems so important? By joining in the stupidity. You see that it's stupid. What that really means is that it has no absolute meaning. It has no absolute value. It has no self, right? There's nothing absolutely significant about whether Barcelona wins or loses, right? We see it here all the time. But, I came home the other day. My son was watching the basketball game, semifinals of the basketball game. He's a fan of the Golden State Warriors because they were there when we lived in San Francisco. They were the basketball team in that area. And he came home, and what did I do? I found myself watching the game with him, going, it was a really exciting game down to the wire, and Golden State won, and I was like totally into it. And then 15 minutes later, I could care less, right? But the only way you can have enjoyment, you can enjoy it, is to be in it and take sides for it. Yeah, is it stupid? Absolutely. Does it matter? Not a bit. Not one jot. But relatively, it does matter. We could say the same thing about anything. Does my family matter? Absolutely no. I mean, you're going to die and they're gone, right? Somebody died. I mean, everything is transient and is going to be here 1 minute and gone the next, right? But does it matter? Well, yes. Again, it's always back to that same yes and no. Does it matter absolutely? No. Nothing does, right? Nothing even exists absolutely. Does it matter relatively? Absolutely. Does a cup exist absolutely? No. But I'm sure glad I have one because I'm thirsty and I can take a drink out of it, right? So we have to see that meaning is not inherent in anything. If meaning was inherent in an object, any object, then then that object would mean the same to absolutely everyone. But it doesn't. You know, a forest to one person is something, oh yeah, that's interesting as they go by. To another, it's like the most beautiful thing they've ever seen. To the other, it's an eyesore that's blocking their view because they want to see the river. You know, to the squirrel, it's home, right? There's no absolute meaning to everything. Meaning is what you give it. Now, if you are aware of that, you are free to give and take meaning at will, to enjoy everything that goes with it. I enjoyed hanging out with my son, watching that game for the last 5 or 10 minutes of it. I thoroughly enjoyed it, and I was into it, right? And they won. It was like, yeah, wow, that was great. We had, right? You know, a little guy bonding thing, and then, it was like, yeah, what's for dinner, right? I mean, it was like nothing absolute there. It is, it's kind of hard when you see people who get very identified with it. I see people all the time. Their cars are decorated like the Seattle Mariners or the Seahawks, right? People who do up their houses, right? And things like they're totally into it. I remember once one of my son's friends when he was young. I went to their house. We went to some games with them because he was totally. I had no idea how into sports he was. When I went to their house, every room was sports paraphernalia all over that, right? Every room had a TV, so you could have ESPN on absolutely everything, right? Well, when I look at that, I say that's somebody avoiding their life, obviously, right? It has become not just a momentary indulgence, it has become a sense of identity. For a lot of people, that matters. It's really, really very important to them. There's not really a whole lot you can do about that. It isn't healthy. It's not going to get them anywhere. As a matter of fact, it's a big distraction. Nonetheless, the actual essence of it is quite innocent, right? When you play a game, you play to win, don't you? Otherwise, why play? Right? I mean, it's tempered, right? When I play a game or something with my son or my granddaughter or something, it's to be in the game. But there's I want, yeah, this is cool. I gotcha, yeah. Sometimes they sit around and play board games or Cards Against Humanity and things like that. Remember, the enjoyment of life is the full engagement in life, right? So there's nothing. There's detachment doesn't mean an absence of feeling. It means an absence of identification, right? It means that this experience I'm having, I fully recognize is going to come and go. So I'm not attached to it going. But when it's here, I am totally in it. I am totally in it. I'm not just sitting on the sidelines watching it. I'm totally in it. But I know full well that it's going to pass, and then I'm totally out of it, right? So this kind of inquiry that we're doing, it doesn't flatten life. It makes it more vivid. It actually makes you more accessible. It makes you more visceral. Everything becomes more engaging. Your relationships should become more intense. Your romances become more intense. Because you see the delicate nature of them. You see the transient nature of them. You see the transient nature of everyone and their feelings, the sensitivity that belongs to all of us, the pain and suffering that all are experiencing. So your presence becomes quite visceral, quite literal. It isn't a compassion that is sitting on the sidelines. Oh, isn't that nice? Like the psychiatrist going, and how did you feel about that? It is very much there. It is feeling what they're feeling, being with them as they are. Well, I hope that answers your question, my friend. Dale says, consciousness is who we are, but is consciousness just pure awareness only? In other words, isn't it the brain that's still actually learning to be enlightened? Does awareness have any smarts? Awareness is infinite intelligence. Can you find anything outside of awareness? Intelligence, creativity, energy, love, intimacy, power, engagement, any kind of quality that you value, learning, growing, developing. Are not those all happening within awareness, within this pure consciousness? In order for there to be growth, right, an evolution, an expansion, doesn't there have to be something that registering the growth? That which was aware of it here, and now here, and now here, and sees that it is growth? Is that which is aware of all of that, is that itself growing? You see, awareness and what it's aware of are not two. That's the mistake a lot of people make. This idea, oh, I'm pure consciousness. So there's just this sense of being that I'm consciousness. But there's the second part of the journey, right? Which is when consciousness now turns its attention back outside. Yes, I'm not that. I'm not my thoughts. I'm not my body. I'm not these sensations. I'm not my memories. I'm not these associations. I'm not all these events taking place. I'm that which is aware of them. I see, right. So who I actually am is just this pure, spacious awareness. It's a wonderful, wonderful place to get to. And everybody needs to get there first. But then, in this beautiful, spacious awareness, you look around and go, wait a minute, everything is still here. It looks different, I'm experiencing it, but it's all still here. What is all of this? And now our curiosity goes from self-discovery to other discovery. What is the nature of what I am experiencing? The realization that I am the experiencer, independent of my experience, does not eliminate experience. Matter of fact, it makes it more visceral. It makes it more vivid. What am I experiencing? What is out there? What is actually, when I experience someone else, what am I actually experiencing? It becomes a really, wow. This is, the attention now turns outward. I call it the post-awakening sadhana. We'll begin to really explode the nature of consciousness so that it's no longer just my nature. It's the nature of all things. Everything appears to consciousness. That's obvious. It all appears within consciousness. I now see that consciousness doesn't have a boundary. Everything I'm experiencing is happening within consciousness. And then finally, the big piece. Well, wait a minute. It's in consciousness. It's not a material existence. Then everything I'm experiencing is made of consciousness. Matter of fact, consciousness is all there is. Which means that this microphone that I'm using here to record is consciousness. The water bottle I have is consciousness. Glasses is. This jacket is. This body is consciousness. It is not separate from it. It's not consciousness and what it is aware of. Consciousness is only aware of itself. Last week I used the example of that we say the table is made out of wood. But we'll take away the wood, do you have a table? Well, no. So the table is wood. You can't take away consciousness and have anything, which means the thing is consciousness. And intelligence is simply that aspect of consciousness that is not random or formless. It actually creates form. And the great mystery of the formless creating form, recognizable, bounded forms that are in fact not bounded because their actual nature is the same as yours. That is, you and what you are aware of are not two. There's only one. And then that sense of pure awareness expands in all directions. It embraces. That's again the feminine principle. It is the compassion side to the wisdom. It is the kanzion to the avalokiteshvara. It is the total embracing of everything as yourself. Even the brain, even what we call the brain, we see as just an object of thought. It's just an idea. There's all sorts of things happening. It too is consciousness. Everything is made of consciousness. Consciousness isn't just something that is perceiving substance, it is the substance. It is not perceiving matter. There is no matter. There is only consciousness. Does that answer it for you, Dale? Carrie Brogan says, why don't spiritual teachers talk about our environmental disaster that is unfolding? Will we survive? Do we deserve to survive? Well, in this setting here, if you've on some of the other things, and actually even some of the satsangs, I have talked about that, right? And spiritual teachers shouldn't be silent about it. The essence of what is happening, when I look at what's happening in the world, the degradation of the quality of life of pretty much every human being on the planet, the hoarding of resources by a handful, the use of horrible power and brutality to hold on to that, is a reflection of a fundamental error I can't even say it's an error. If you take the sense of a deluded human ego and you magnify it across the entire world, this is what you get. Ramana Maharshi made a comment, and I actually made a meme out of it because it's so powerful. He says, trying to save the world without knowing who you are is like trying to lay leather across the entire surface of the earth so you don't hurt your feet when you're walking on stones and thorns. He says, it's much simpler to wear shoes. The answer to all of these questions, well, first, do we deserve to survive? Absolutely. Will we survive? I will also say absolutely. We're going to go through a period of 10 to 20 years that is going to get very dark. It is not going to be pretty over these next 10 to 20 years. I'm not going to tell you this stuff. There's some things that clearly are going to happen. It is going to push humanity up to the edge. But what is that edge? That edge is that edge that is going to be pushed up against will be the last vestiges of our clinging to the egoic mind. The first vestiges of it are what we are seeing right here in Satsang. Those of us who are diligently looking to put an end to the egoic mind and to have the realization of who we really are. That, and only that, is going to save the world. That is the only thing that is going to put an end to the stupidity, the barbarity, the self-destructiveness, the 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 the, trying to remake the world over, like in the shape of the egoic mind that is dominating. The only thing that can save us from that is the awakening to who we actually are, and that does not happen in mass. It's not like suddenly the heavens are going to part and the UFOs are going to come and tell us what the truth is, or Jesus is going to come out of the sky. None of that's going to happen. It's all coming from within. And I know it's happening because it happened in me, it's happened in others, it's happening in you. I know it's happening. I see it happening. This level of conversation is the result of it, that it is happening. It is the proof, the evidence that consciousness is awakening to what it really is. And as that awakening takes place, the energy of the egoic mind, the forces of darkness, or the devil, if you want to use that metaphor, gets agitated, gets aggressive, gets bigger, more graspy, trying to hold on to more power, trying to wipe out everything unlike itself. It's futile. It can't possibly win because it's not real. It is sustained only by belief in it. And as the horrific consequences of maintaining that belief become more and more apparent, the reality of that belief will become increasingly questioned. And it's happening. All over the place, people are going, wait a minute, what the hell are we doing? This is crazy. And then we realize that the power structures that have been put in place are all to support those who are profiting from all of the destruction that we're seeing. But this is being seen too. And do not underestimate the power of that seeing. When a truth is seen as the truth, it is the most powerful thing on the planet. It's only a matter of time before the falsity is seen as falsity. Because while falsity needs to maintain control over the media and politics and all of that sort of stuff in order to stay in power, truth does not need any of that. It is self-sustained. It need not even be believed to remain true. A falsity needs to be believed and held in belief and forced into belief, and that is what we are seeing. You seeing it is actually the most powerful influence you can have, because to see a falsity as a falsity robs it of power. Yep, there's still a lot of people out there who believe it. There's still a lot of people who are trying to maintain it. The entire U.S. government is doing nothing but that. It has completely sold its soul to the devil. Nonetheless, it is being seen. We're seeing it. We're seeing that that's what's happening. Right? That can't be unseen. And that seeing, that is the substance, the heart and soul of what satsang is all about, will have its impact. It is having its impact. It's having. There are pockets of awakening all over the place. It's like I said, the more there is awakening, the more the forces of darkness are going to rally, until those that have been completely deluded and hypnotized by the forces of darkness will begin to they too will begin to wake up. There's been many a revolution that happened, people, dictators and things falling out of power simply because the army just refused to support them anymore. The basis of power just fell away, and they just away they went. because those that were supporting him just stopped believing him. It doesn't have to be somebody important, a bunch of little people saying no. You know how many times, we don't hear a lot about this, every now and then stories leak about how many times we've come this close to complete and total nuclear war. But one individual acting independently said something's wrong here. There was actually one, I can't remember exactly when it was, I think it was back in the 50s, where they got the order to fire the nuclear arsenal. And the guy, they got the orders, they got the targeting information, and the guy said, wait a minute, these missiles are pointing at China. And this is the 50s, right? We don't, wait, China, it's right. It was he was confused. Something was wrong, right? And yet here's the order, clear. The other guy was there, right? They had the two keys to do it. Well, he pulled out his gun. He pointed at it and he says, we're not doing this. And he took him, and he convinced him as well. And the both of them went over to another one of the silos and held them at gunpoint to keep them from doing it until they found out that the order was incorrect, that it wasn't supposed to happen, right? Now, that was the action of one person, which stopped a nuclear holocaust. This is what we're doing here, folks. One person with an awakened mind, a questioning mind, and just a little bit of courage is going to go, something's not right. It's happening. It's happening. I so appreciate you asking the questions, and so you can see that spiritual teachers do talk about our environmental degradation and what we can do. The solution for me is exactly what I'm doing. I mean, I'm really concerned about these things. I have a granddaughter. I have two sons, right? I'm very concerned about what the next decade or two is going to be like, right? But from my perspective as a spiritual teacher, I see what the actual cause is. And so for decades, I've been doing this. Because to me, this is the solution. Yet we need other kinds of solutions. We need technical solutions. But believe me, if there's that shift in consciousness, we have at our disposal right now everything we need to do to completely eradicate all the harm that we've done. I mean, some things we can't do. Species that have gone extinct because of us. There's some things we cannot undo. But we can restore the balance and the harmony and cooperate with the nature of all life rather than think we're supposed to dominate it. To be a part of the flow of life as a human being, simultaneously recognizing the true nature of our existence as the consciousness of the whole. And that can happen very, very quickly. And it is my belief that it's going to. It's going to look like it's not going to happen. It's going to get very, very dark, and then all of a sudden, something very stupendous is going to happen, and the transformation is going to be like the blink of an eye. Atma Vichara. Beautiful name. Hi there, GP. What would you recommend for someone experiencing mind or psychic attacks that can be quite terrifying at times? Thanks. Mind attacks, psychic... If you're talking about psychic attacks like somebody else is attacking you, or you're talking about just like the experience of the mind, when the truth of our being begins to dawn, as it is on every single one of you, by the way, you would not be listening to me if it wasn't, okay? And by the way, it's 1:19. This may be the last question. Wow, all sorts of great questions. Well, let's see how far I get. When the sense of who you really are begins to dawn, and it's like I said, it's dawning on all of you. That's why you're here. The initial blush, the initial experience, the initial insights, almost never immediately transform the entirety of our being. Apparently it did happen in the case, I know of a few cases, Ramana Maharshi, Steve Jordan, there was another woman. Suddenly the realization took place, and immediately, shoop, all conditioning, all habits, all karma, everything came to an end. Right? Now, one could argue, well, maybe that, 100 lifetimes before that, preparing for that moment at 16 years old when Ramana Maharshi struggled with death and completely woke up and became one of the greatest sages of all time. I think it's a little bit naive to just put it in those terms, and that's all there is to it. My personal experience, and the experience of most people I know, and the experience of a lot of people, and I'm not telling you anything that Mooji doesn't tell the people, or any of the other teachers that I recommend. What happens is there's an awakening. Something goes, wow, yes, that's true. Something inside confirms the truth of it. You don't even know why it's true. You can't even put your finger on it. If somebody asked you to explain, you would have a hard time. You might not. You might even kind of lose a sense of it as you were trying to explain it. Right? It's real. What you experienced was real. You experienced a moment of awakening. Not a thought of awakening, not an awakening experience. You experienced awakening. And that will never ever leave you, and it will transform everything from here on out, but not instantaneously. The whole tenor of the entire energy system, call it the nervous system, call it the chakras, call it the energy system, call it the astral body, call it the repository consciousness, I don't care what you call it, right? It is all still laboring under and operating under the model of being a separate self. So you're going to have this insight, and it can be very overwhelming. All of a sudden, the heavens part, and you think everything's wonderful. And you think, I'm never coming down from this. Well, in fact, you aren't ever going to come down for this. However, what is going to arise in your consciousness, now that the veil has fallen from your eyes and you have seen something clearly, even if it's a little tiny bitty thing, right? You are now going to see what before you were identified with. When you were identified with it, you could not see it because you were it. It was hiding behind your eyeballs. But suddenly an insight in your back here. Now, all of a sudden, all of the conditioned patterns, the programmed responses, the self-deception, the illusions, the delusions, all start coming to the surface. And the more you return to that sense of who you really are, it's going to actually exacerbate. We're going to feel it as the mind revolting, as the ego fighting back. Just as I was saying earlier, it's happening on a global scale. The awakening of consciousness that is manifesting as individuals awakening is having the pushback from the egoic mind, which is holding on tightly to its position and trying to enforce itself through power and intimidation. The same thing is happening internally in you. And so, let me make sure I'm answering this question right. Right. So, we could refer to those as mind attacks. The mind, which is still identified with the separate self, is attacking that which is causing it distress. Now, notice, that's it. Your new vision is a direct threat to the whole foundation upon which you've been living your life. Right? And what does the nervous system do with a threat? Well, it defends itself. It reacts. It may even attack. Right? Right? But remember, it's not a thing attacking you. It's not an entity attacking you. It is a robotic, programmed behavior. It is simply a pattern of thought and emotion and sensation that has a momentum to it that you have simply introduced into something. You have basically taken and thrown a stick into the wheel. It's like, and it's frantically trying to free itself. Your job is to sink more deeply into the heart of that vision, which is an expansion of heart, expansion of compassion. Right? Don't see it as the attack and I've got to get rid of the attacker, because all you're doing is making more tension. You're making more of a conflict. You're making more and creating more suffering. Realize what's happening and look at it with compassion. You are simply witnessing an energy that feels threatened. What if you were to not be a threat? What if you were simply look on it with love, compassion, patience? Nothing can attack the truth. It can lie about the truth. Can try to deceive people, can try to convince people it's true when it isn't. But what can you do with the truth? It's the truth. It holds all the cards. So the truth cannot be attacked. And the truth is what you are. The truth is what is witnessing the entire thing. What is witnessing the mind's attack? The truth. The truth of who you are. Are you at all affected, you as consciousness, affected really by the mind's attacks? The attack. And are you not equally aware of whatever it is that's reacting to the attack that says, I don't want that, the psychic attacks, how do I stop them? Isn't that also being perceived in the same consciousness? Let the sense of I, the sense of self, sink increasingly deeply into simply being that which is aware of what's happening. At which point, you don't have to try to stop the attacks. You simply stop being the enemy. Right? If there's no enemy, there's nothing for it to attack. You know, our modern world is my enemy. They're going to attack me. I'm going to attack them first, or I'm going to prepare. I'm going to defend myself. But but I'm not the enemy. No attack. If there is no enemy, there's nothing to attack. So don't be the enemy. Consciousness is no one's enemy. Awareness, love, is no one's enemy. That's what Jesus meant when he said, love your enemies. To love your enemies is to find you don't have any. Right? That's incompatible. Love your enemy means he's not your enemy. Love everyone the way you love your brother, your sister, your wife, your husband. Well, not exactly. Everybody gets loved a little bit differently, but the same open, expansive, wholeness of accepting. You know, I've seen people do that. I've seen people, empathics and other psychics, have psychic attacks, and people are trying to attack me, and I've even seen some of it. Where there was actually somebody trying to attack them. But I came to discern always that the thing that was creating the suffering and was really creating the pain was not their attack, but our fear of it. And are making the attacker into an enemy. when there's just this open, total acceptance and total allowing whatever is to happen, there's no enemy. The attack passes through you. It cannot touch you. You can't attack the sky. You can't attack space. It has no effect. You have to turn yourself into something that can be attacked in order for the attack to have any power. If you're nothing that can be attacked, if you're pure spacious awareness, what can possibly attack you? It's like the ultimate Aikido, right? The energy just passes right through. So I hope that answers your question. I'm going to scroll through here. I got 1:30. Yeah, it's like 10 after. Let me see. TG Graphics. The present accepting of God, perfect. Listening to you for over a year, you inspired me to get baptized and confirmed, to find my spiritual self, and the church helps me practice my spiritual self. That makes me happy, actually. I am not anti-church, folks. I don't really go to one. I'm not going to start one, anything like that. I mean, I've visited Unity churches and Center for Spiritual Living, and even some others. I've been to Baptist church and some things like that. I want to see the churches reconnect with the origin of Christianity, which is the very truth that we're talking about. God is the truth. God is the truth of being. Christ revealed God as the actual substance and self of every being. And I just really want to see that reconnected in the church. So I love seeing people going to church and actually participating in my satsangs. Believe it or not, I have, as a student, she's been through all of my inner reconciliation class. She has asked me all sorts of questions. She's a 96-year-old nun in Missouri. She's been a nun her entire life, never been married, never had any kind of romantic relationship. She gave her life, and she's gotten all the other nuns around listening to my meditations, listening to inner reconciliation, and I haven't heard from her in a while. I'm a bit concerned. I have to check in and see. Part of some order of nuns, and so to see this message beginning to permeate and bring back from the religious fringe back to the essence and to the source of it, to me, I find very gratifying. So I am absolutely delighted that you got baptized and confirmed and you're part of this church, and you are leavening that entire loaf and bringing a deep spiritual presence to him. Thank you so much. This is really wonderful. Is meditation more effective than self-inquiry? No. No, they're both necessary. They're both sides of it are necessary. I've not seen one. Meditation can get you to a state of samadhi, but not to self-realization. Self-inquiry, if it isn't tempered with compassion and love and devotion and just pure allowing, which is meditation, can get to intellectual. So it's neither one nor the other. It's always this beautiful fragrance, this beautiful merging, right? Of just a little bit of this and a little bit of that in different quantities, and it's different for everyone. It's absolutely different for everyone. There's no perfect formula for it. Thanks, GP. Great answer to our question. This is David Lean asking about the triggers, on life's triggers. Guessing it arises from an expectation that these triggers would have gone by now. Ah, yes. But also acknowledge that this is also seen and known. Yes, it should be gone by now. Who said? Right? That's just the mind can hold on to something, say, see, you're not there yet. Because, if you were, this wouldn't be happening. Well, you are there, and it's happening. It's really quite self-evident. I'll finish up today with a story you guys can that really fits beautifully with what you just said, Dave and Elaine. And it's a story of a Zen master. Her name was Sono. And unlike a lot of Zen masters who lived in, monasteries and they're abbots and all of that sort of thing, she lived by herself in a hut somewhere, very modestly. But people used to come to get satsang from her, to get advice. And one fellow came, a monk came to her and said, I'm really selfish. How do I overcome this? How do I overcome all these things to awaken? And she says, well, here's what I want you to do. Every morning and every night, or whenever you think of it, I want you to say, thanks for everything. I can't remember the words. I don't have any complaint whatsoever. I have no complaint whatsoever. Thanks for everything. I have no complaint whatsoever. And he says, great, I'm going to practice that. And off he went. Well, a year later, he comes back. He says, Master, I've been practicing this just as you said the whole time. She said, but I'm still selfish. I'm still clinging. She says, thanks for everything. I have no complaint whatsoever. And in that moment, he had a great enlightenment. Thanks for everything. I have no complaint whatsoever. Triggers are arising. Anger is arising. Selfishness is arising. Thanks for everything. I have no complaint whatsoever. The moment you think that what's arising is a problem, it's got you. It's alien. Right? The moment it's just an arising, who cares with the right? Awareness is not concerned with the quality or quantity of what arises. Right? We are. I want to have different things arise. I want more pleasure. I want more money. I want more fun. I want more peace. Awareness is not concerned about that. Whatever arises arises. It does not disturb awareness. So whether it be absolute bliss or it be total chaos and distraction, the moment you have an argument with it, you've created a division and you have made the separate self. If there's no argument, there's no separate self. So remember the words of Sono. Thanks for everything. I have no complaint whatsoever. Let that be your mantra this week, and then let me know what you experience. So, by the way, I will be doing. We've scheduled the special satsang for all of my donors, the people who have donated to help keep me on the air. It will be 21st of May, Tuesday, 2:30 Eastern. I think it's going to be 2 or 3, between 2 or 3 Eastern time. Everybody who has donated either through PayPal or through Patreon will be informed. We'll be getting an email about it, the exact place to do it. I really like doing these satsangs because I can actually talk to people. You can, I can open up your audio and we can have a conversation, or you can even be on video if you want. So it's a little more. I can take it to another level than just answering questions on the chat. Although I love doing this as well. But so anybody who still wants to participate, you still can. You just have to donate either Patreon or PayPal. Go to gpwalsh.com/Patreon, Patreon, but that's always a recurring donation, right? So something every month. On PayPal, you just go to gpwalsh.com/donate, and you can just make a one-time donation, so that you can participate in this particular satsang. I give a little reward to the people who help me out, because this is this is pretty, I like to keep everything as cheap as I possibly can, keep it all commercial free, and devote as much of my time to this as I possibly can. I'd like to get to the point where I don't have to charge for any classes at all. That would be really great. So, on that note, thank you all once again for being here. Thank you for participating in Satsang. Thank you for thank you for caring about this. Thank you for noticing that this kind of conversation, this kind of inquiry, is important. I mean, to me, there's nothing more important in the human kingdom. And many, if not all of you, share that feeling with me. And so this kind of exploration, it is the salvation of you, and it is the salvation of everyone you know, and it is the salvation of the entire world. So it has an import that is way beyond even our own personal interests. So thank you for being here. Thank you for your love and devotion.